Thank you, Vice President. Excellencies, distinguished guests, thank you for coming today. I know you all have a very heavy work schedule this session. I'm going to focus on 2 points today. The first point is that the ocean is our mother, and the rivers are her kin. And the second point is that when discussing and thinking about climate change, fishers are not part of the problem. They are key to the solution. And you all must do a better job respecting, protecting, and fulfilling the human rights of small-scale fishers, fish workers, and indigenous peoples, with an emphasis on gender justice. If you do not ensure aquatic communities have access to waterways and that fish workers work with dignity, you will lose your connection to the oceans, rivers, and seas. You will weaken your connection to nature and to life itself. If I may put it another way, in more positive terms, if you fully realize the human rights of small-scale fishers, fish workers, and indigenous peoples, with an emphasis on gender justice, you will make entire coastal and riparian communities stronger and food systems more resilient and adaptable in the face of climate change. Before I provide more details, I'll give you an example of how small-scale fishers are key to making coastal communities stronger. The recent war in Gaza has been going on for almost 5 months, during which the Palestinian people are facing imminent famine. Israel is not only denying and restricting the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza, Israel is destroying the food system in Gaza. Israel has mounted a starvation campaign against the Palestinian people in Gaza. And one way it is doing this is by targeting small-scale fishers. Since October 7, Israel has denied all fishers access to the sea and destroyed approximately 80% of the fishing sector. Israeli forces decimated the port of Gaza, destroying every single fishing boat and shack. In Rafah, only 2 out of 40 boats are left. In Khan Yunis, Israel destroyed approximately 75 small fishing vessels. To destroy the lives and livelihoods of Palestinian fishers is to undermine the right to food for everyone in Gaza and push people into hunger and starvation. In fact, Israel has been strangling Gaza for 17 years through a blockade, which included denying and restricting small-scale fishers access to their territorial waters. Before the blockade, fishers had decent work. A young fisher could live a middle-class life. Since the blockade, fishers have been pushed into poverty. So, to ensure the Palestinian people can realize their right to food and self-determination and live a life with dignity, this has to include respecting, protecting, and fulfilling the human rights of small-scale fishers in Gaza, including ensuring safe and full access to their territorial waters. Let me turn now to the idea and the concept that the ocean is our mother and the rivers are her kin. I hope you saw that phrase in my recommendations in the report. What that means is that when you're creating policies around oceans, seas, rivers, and lakes, you should always start from the point that the ocean has been the source of life itself on our planet. Life began in the ocean, and oceans produce roughly half of the oxygen on Earth. The majority of this oxygen production is from oceanic plankton. So instead of treating the ocean like our mother and rivers and lakes like our relatives, we are unfortunately treating the ocean like a source of economic growth. We are increasingly commodifying our water. The commodification of water is happening through concepts and programs under titles like blue economy, blue growth, blue transformation, and blue finance. These are all attempts to somehow reconcile the challenges of climate change, fish stock depletion, and biodiversity degradation with the desire for economic growth and development. For over a century, too many countries and businesses have treated our waterways as an infinite source of fish and wealth, as if fish would always be super abundant. All these concepts, blue economy, blue growth, blue transformation, blue finance, are an attempt to recalibrate economic thinking. But they are limited in the same way. They still start from the point that prioritizes economic growth and development without prioritizing life itself. I'll focus on the FAO Blue Transformation Program. FAO is trying to balance economic interests with human rights through its Blue Transformation Program. However, before getting to such solutions, it is important to take note how the FAO frames the problem. To the FAO, the challenge is to somehow increase aquatic production to meet rising demand. Global consumption of aquatic foods increased at an average annual rate of 3% from 1961 to 2019. This is a rate that is almost double the rate of world population growth for the same period. However, addressing increasing rates of hunger is different than addressing increasing consumption rates. Hunger and malnutrition are not caused by a lack of food, and therefore hunger is not a production problem. Food production rates matter, but hunger and malnutrition occur when there are political breakdowns and institutional weaknesses. This takes me to my second point. If climate change is the existential threat of our era, the question is not just what is to be done, but who. Who is going to adapt to climate change and still feed us? This takes me to the point that small-scale fishers, fish workers, and indigenous peoples are key to the solution when dealing with climate change. When it comes to our waterways, it is small-scale fishers and indigenous peoples living in good relations with aquatic life who know what to do. Small-scale fishers and indigenous peoples have the knowledge it takes to adapt to climate change and feed communities. That means that the specific problem at hand is not predominantly an economic or scientific problem. Of course, science and economics matter. The problem at hand is that small-scale fishers and indigenous peoples are too often ignored, marginalized, harassed, and targeted by states and corporations. Let me describe to you who are small-scale fishers and fish workers. Small-scale fishers typically involve fishing households who use small-scale fishing vessels. They depend on small amounts of capital and energy, usually in the form of family, household, or cooperative labor, and fish close to the shore with short stints into the particular body of water. Small-scale fishers tend to be firmly rooted in local communities, traditions, and values, and as such provide food and livelihoods for entire communities across generations. What counts as small, however, is very context-specific for each particular country, and it covers a wide range of different sizes when we look at it globally. Small-scale fishing is a way of life as much as it is a livelihood. It is how many communities create meaning and value in their daily life. Therefore, what's at stake are people's cultural rights. Unlike large vessels, which are often supported through foreign capital, small vessels are directly linked to local communities, ensuring vibrancy in small ports and creating social and cultural value. Ultimately, determining what is small scale is a social, cultural, and political question on a national basis, and not so much a technical question. States should define small-scale fishing through a transparent and meaningful public process using human rights-based approaches. It is important to understand the difference between small-scale fishers and fish workers. Each constituency has something different at stake and its own set of legal instruments. Nevertheless, these interests and instruments overlap, and many of the rights available to small-scale fishers are also available to fish workers. Also, an individual holds a plural dynamic set of identities. So, for example, many small-scale fishers work as workers for wealthier fishers or large-scale industrial fishing vessels. There are profound gender inequalities in fishing. To determine which activities are under the gamut of fisher versus worker, this distinction is often made in gendered ways, where women's work is often undervalued. One way to think about what makes someone a worker is not the type of work, but the conditions of their work. So a person is a fish worker when they work for an employer who pays them an income. Fishery work is one of the 3 most hazardous occupations and is described by the International Labour Organization as dirty, dangerous, and difficult. Yet states often fall short of their obligations and fail to monitor the sector and implement applicable national health and safety regulations. Each fish worker, on average, provides for 3 dependents or family members. For each worker involved in capture fisheries, about 4 jobs are produced in secondary activities, including fish trading, processing, and selling, many of which are performed by women. Women, children, and migrant workers are particularly vulnerable to the most severe forms of exploitation. Women continue to face discrimination and gender-based violence through the industry, with more occupational risks, less secure employment than men, and fewer opportunities to unionize. Thankfully, there are already existing legal tools outlined in the report to support the human rights of small-scale fishers, fish workers, and indigenous peoples. The solutions are therefore not complicated. You have the answers already and the tools you need. All you have to do is implement these legal tools and enforce the law. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our dialogue.